Well, I got a little joke about these mics I heard in Sunday one Sunday at church, and the preacher said that he'd gone to this church and he was speaking there as a guest pastor, and he got up front and something was wrong with that lapel mic, and he saw the sound guy make his way down to the front pew, and he was sitting there. He said, "Something's up. This guy's going to do something." And he said, let us pray. And he bowed his head, and it took him a second to get his thoughts together. And about that time, that sound guy put his hand in his pocket to get that lapel mic, and he said, "Oh, dear Jesus." And but anyway, I felt a little bit that way. I am Dalton Bennett from Red House, Virginia. I drove 400 and some odd miles, actually 600 and some odd miles to get here, and I passed a lot of country, but I tell you, I haven't really left home. I mean, things look a lot similar. We talk about context, and that's definitely true. Y'all got a little more elevation, but y'all got a lot of hot fescue. We got a lot at home, too. That's as poetic as we're going to get. We're going to take a genetic journey today, and I'm going to liken this to if you're going to take that trip like I did yesterday, there's a couple of things that you've got to do to prepare for that, and a couple of things you got to do while you're on it. We're going to get into that. But before we get there, this is my girls. That's my wife, and my Kennedy, my Hadley. Hadley's in my wife's arms. Kennedy's the redhead there, planning her next move. That's why I get up and go to work every morning. Love them to death. We had an appointment today for our third daughter that's on the way, and everything's looking good. So yeah, I'm a maternal bull apparently, but I love my girls. I wouldn't trade them for anything in this world. Kennedy turned 5 last Saturday, and Hadley's 2.5. And I don't know who could take who, to be honest. That 2.5-year-old is tough. She's a tough one. So I've got a couple treats up here, and for a hat, we talked about adaptation. That's a set of Hereford cows that we have. By the way, we have Angus, Hereford, Gelbvieh, Balancer cattle. That's a set of Hereford grazing cattles. I'm not an English major. Grazing behind. That's it, hot fescue. They're strip grazing, stockpiled fescue. First calf heifers. What did I have to do to get those cattle adapted to that system? Anybody for a hat? Anybody want to answer it? What did I have to do to those cows? Nothing?
Open the gate.
I hauled them over there and I dumped them out. You wear a hat? I hauled them over there and I dumped them out. Now, we heard, I'm going to be a little contrary, and I'm doing this for a purpose. In that herd of cattle, I would say 60% of them are a product of AI mating, and from that mating, I bet 30% of those bulls were west of the Mississippi, never touched fescue in their life. Now, what we have to determine isn't the expression of that animal's ability to adapt. We have to determine that they have that ability. Does that make sense? Now, as a commercial producer, that's a costly thing to do. If you buy a bull and you find out he's not adapted to your system, it could break the bank. That's a costly thing to do. So the idea of buying that bull from close to home or into a system that's like yours or maybe worse than yours, I would say maybe a little worse would be better. For me, I have an economic incentive to reach out, find that piece of the puzzle from somewhere else that didn't come from my environment, take a calculated risk on it, and move forward with it. And as those heifers there, they grazed the feed bunk last winter. They didn't, they did graze beside their mother at some point, but they grazed the feed bunk last winter. So they're perfectly happy in that situation, except for one that got out a couple times, and I fixed her. It quit raining. I said, "I tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna get thirsty." And then she met me at the gate on the second or third day, and I got her back in. So we're talking about taking this journey, right? Well, the first thing, y'all remember MapQuest? It's not a lot of young people in here, but I'm starting to feel like my dad. Back in my day, we printed their directions out. So you remember MapQuest? What was the first question they asked you on MapQuest? Where are you going? Where are you going? And that's something that we have to determine. If we're going to change our cattle, or even if we're going to keep them the same, remember, doing nothing is an action, right? So if we're going to change our cattle, where are we going? What do we want? And I think that these 4 points come in very, very near and dear in my mind. And I think the first one here is one that gets overlooked constantly in the cattle business. I had a good friend in the sheep business told me, he said, you can make the ones you like or you can make the ones you can sell. Why is it that in agriculturally especially, we like producing a commodity product with no marketing plan where we become price takers? If you are going to determine, you say, all right, where are we going? Well, what do we need to make? What is it that we're making? Is it an M1 steer? Is it black? Is it red? Is it a grass-finished ribeye? What is it that we need to make? Because if you don't have that plan of, all right, what is it that I need when I get there? what good is it going, right? The second thing I think that comes into a big play is lifestyle. I tell people all the time, you saw my 2 girls, third on the way, I feel the responsibility to live, if I want them to continue doing what I do, what Dad does, I feel the responsibility to live my life in a way that they say, you know what? That looks pretty cool. That looks pretty awesome. And that probably doesn't mean that I am working 80-hour weeks, I work some, but not that many. It means that I'm making it to ballet recital. These things that happen. You know how many football games my dad missed while I was in high school? None. Not a single one. He came to every single one of them, and that was because they chose that lifestyle. And that's part of the reason that I'm there. Environmental factors, we've touched on that. Tall fescue, we don't have to talk about it much. We know what that is. If you are looking for cattle and you say, all right, I need this, that, or the other, they have to be a piece to that puzzle that you're looking to make, And not every puzzle piece has to look the same. My wife and I worked one of the hardest puzzles she loved working puzzles. I love being beside her, so that I was there. And we worked this puzzle, and it was Santa was in his workshop, and Santa's a Ford guy, which might explain the reindeer. And anyway, so Santa's painting this old car that he's making for somebody. There's Ford emblems on the wall. You pick up a piece. There's paint cans out. You pick up a piece of that puzzle, and it might be a part of that paint can. And you say, well, that ain't Santa. It might be a part of Santa's beard. But all of these things go together, right? Y'all follow me? Those environmental factors are, you go to Florida and find out what environmental factors are. You take a cow from Saskatchewan and move her to Florida, we're gonna have a problem here. There's a different thing there. And it's all form that follows function. And I say this, how fast do you want to get there? We can fly, we can take the train, we can drive. They're all going to cost different things. They're going to hurt different ways. For a fella that's 33 years old, I can go a little slower. I don't have any money, so I can't spend much of it. If you're 60 years old and you want to see big improvements in your cow herd, you probably need to buy something in and go a little faster. Does that make sense? All right. What's the second question MapQuest asked you when you typed it in back in that, pulled the handle on that big computer? Where are you at? You don't know. How are you going to know where you're going if you don't know where you are? How are you going to know where you're going to, what path you're going to take if you can't figure out where you are? So I will admit, measurement, these other two things are a form of measurement, but measurement's kind of how we're going to get there, right? So measurement can take many different forms. And I think that if you say, all right, my calves weigh X number of pounds, I want them heavier. Next year they weigh more. You say, daggone, I did a good job, didn't I? Well, it might have rained more. So it's important to take measurement is something that's a reliable way to gather that information. It's not just a sale barn ticket. You could have sold your calves 3 weeks later. Of course they were heavier. So that measurement is gonna shape the way that we view our cow herd, correct? Use that from different data points, right? So if your two data points are, I want heavy calves at the stockyard and I want them to top the market, you're looking pretty good right now. If you had a good year and your calves were heavy and they topped the market, or your bank account's what you're measuring with, things look good, but in 5 years, that bank account might get a little tight. Does that mean that you stopped doing a good job or you didn't make any progress? Absolutely not. I think that from back in the day when we were all in 4-H and we learned how to look at one, right? I didn't really learn in 4-H. I actually learned from a sheep guy in college at about 2 o'clock in the morning on various mornings. He had a day job and we worked nights, and which was fine for a college kid. Might I mention, I am this is orange and maroon if y'all couldn't tell. I am a graduate of Virginia Tech. But anyway, visual appraisal is important. My Uncle Paul and I, we were having a conversation one day, and somebody had come in, they wanted a long bull. I just kept on saying, I want a long one. I want a long bull. That guy left, and Paul said, I kind of view cattle as being proportionate. Length times height, they're just kind of balanced cattle they're as long as they are tall. Length is an arbitrary kind of measurement in his mind. And about 3 weeks later, got the call from a neighbor, and he said, I got a calf. We can't get it out. So I go over there, and it's one of them ones. I put my ear down on that cow as I'm trying to get in there. And as I'm looking over, I'm looking at a cow, and I swear to you, she looked like she was that long. And I thought, length is important to that cow right there. That's a cow that she wasn't that balanced cow that we had kind of gotten accustomed to seeing on their side of the road. But that visual appraisal should have told that producer, he should have been pulling his own calf, but that should have told that producer that, hey, we got a problem here. We either need length, or really what that thing needed was a ride to the market. This center one might upset some people. Genomics, in my view, genomics are where we're headed. I'm just going to, from a commercial standpoint, from a purebred aspect, I've seen the progress that we could make with genomics. And I've seen genomics, just the DNA of those cattle, I've seen it sort 7/8 brothers out and put them on different ends of the spectrum. And I mean, in one particular instance, I remember a set of bulls coming in, and I looked at them, and I looked them up, and their EPDs were similar, and I said, them two bulls, they're different bulls. One of them was big, stout, big topped, just awesome. And by his EPDs, he was a Cavanese heifer bull. And the other one was a dud. I mean to tell you, he was just narrow, he was a dud. But their EPDs were very similar, and we got genomics back, and that was the only data point that went in. We hadn't put weaning weights, yearling weights in yet. When we got genomics back, it sent those bulls to two opposite ends of the spectrum. That big stout bull, he wasn't a heifer bull anymore. He didn't look like one. The form didn't follow the function, right? And that little narrow bull, he went to a -6 on birth weight, and his yearling weight, weaning weight went down to the bottom too. It all followed suit. But when I saw that, the light bulb went off. I said, this is working. Genomics are a great way for you to look into your herd and say, where is it that I'm lacking and what is it that I need to improve? And this is a great point, a great time to bring up the point that we are not looking for maximization. Maximization in cattle will lead you down a bumpy road that's going to cost you a lot of money and not give you a lot of return. We're looking for optimization for what we need, right? So that may mean that, all right, we're selling freezer beef. We probably want to push that marbling as hard as maybe not as hard, but we need a sufficient amount of it, correct? But if we're in a grazing situation, we probably better pull back on that mature weight. But if we're in a silage wagon goes by them twice a day kind of situation, mature weight, y'all can do whatever you want with it. This is where we're trying to really fine tune these cattle. And anyway, all right. So we've gotten our directions in MapQuest. We know where we are. We know where we're going. How do we get there? This is the fun part. This is the fun part right here. And it all boils down to, in genetics, it's a simple formula. It's the simplest thing ever, right? It's just so simple. Heritability times selection pressure. And what that means is we're going to have traits that are a certain degree heritable. Growth is so good at this because growth is a heritable trait, a highly heritable trait. This comes from Canada, and I can't read it over here. I don't know why I put it on there. But can anybody read that? No, absolutely nobody. There's Cavanese. Anyway, these are highly, this is pointless. Anyway, up top you have highly heritable traits, and down low you have lowly heritable traits. And so basically what you're looking for is if that coefficient of heritability is high and we put a lot of selection pressure on it, let's use weaning weight as one of those, as this, in this example. If we say, all right, our heavier calves are what we're going to keep, we're going to make cows out of them, you can move weaning weight in a positive direction very quickly. This is a compounding thing, though. Remember that this is compounding. That X is a multiplier. You're not going to move your cow herd in a big, fast way with one of these. If you just use heritability, which would mean just the bulls you're using, and you keep every single heifer, you don't have that multiplying effect. Now, by using selection pressure, that's where we're going to have that multiplying effect. As we take that bottom end, let's weaning weight again. If we say, all right, we're going to take the top 2/3 and we're going to push them into our cow herd, now we've taken that bottom. Now we've multiplied that heritability, correct? So that's how we push forward. And a lot of people, we were talking about it earlier. A lot of people kind of miss that portion of it, where that selection pressure kind of comes off. They say, well, I'm growing, I need all the heifers I can get, or she jumped the fence, I just couldn't catch her, or we were joking, said, I get the call all the time. They say, we need a bull, and I got some red heifers, and I knew I was going to get dinged at the market with them, so I kept them. I'm thinking, they were less valuable, so you kept them. And so we get them a homozygous black bull or Angus bull or something. But that selection pressure has been diminished in that. And I don't want to be contrary, but fertility is a very lowly heritable trait. But the reason that it is so lowly heritable, in my opinion, is we don't keep many heifers out of open cows, right? When you start carrying that cow over, putting her into another calving season and say, well, we'll put her in next go around. She was open this time. We're going to put her in. Now you are keeping something out of her. You're adding this selection pressure in a negative manner, and you're going to keep a heifer out of her, right? So now I think that's where we get these low coefficients of heritability, is the fact that in a traditional system, a lowly fertile cow produces very few daughters, which then again, it doesn't compound down the road. Now we can create a system where we prop her up. That doesn't mean she's going to stand, right? We prop her up and we give her what she needs and we get her bred, and now we're keeping daughters out of her, and we could be headed down a dangerous road in that respect. So just something to think about on the heritability aspect of it. So this is another graphic out of Canada. They really had a good graphic here. I couldn't not use it. We're looking at sire selection. That's how we're going to improve our cow herd, right? That's how most people do it. It's expensive to go out and buy a new cow herd. It's just expensive to say, all right, well, I don't really like these cows. They're not exactly what I want. They're not part of the puzzle. I'm going to just wipe them all out and buy exactly what I want. It's expensive. So here's just a great graphic. We're going to start here with this generation, and you got the whole of these both, and then we're keeping each heifer going down, right? Well, look down here. We're talking about 3 matings here, and look at this calf. Look how much of that original cow, that original, basically think of that as your cow herd, is that blue piece on that little calf. It's 12.5%. All of a sudden in 3 matings, we have changed this calf to be something that is, correct me if I'm wrong, 87.5% what we do want, because we picked the right bulls along the way. So and And don't forget in that first mating, right, that just because this product isn't exactly what you want, it's still 50% of this, right? And so if you're relying on the green bull to make this calf, look how much of that next product is green. Are we getting there? Don't forget that, you come to me, you got a birth weight problem, and you have to pull this calf right here. Well, I couldn't help you but half. I couldn't help you but half of it, right? And that cow's part of the equation. However, on the inverse of that bull is half of the entire calf crop that he was exposed to. So this cow is only half of that one mating. So we can really see big gains with their bull selection and how we're going about changing our herd in a very short manner of time. I mean, 3 generations there. You're talking about if you're turning those over, heifer matings, and it's 6 years. You can get down to this calf, this product right here, which seems like a long time to my 5-year-old, but it does, to me it seems like less and less time every day. So, another horrible slide. I spoke behind Mr. Glenn here one time before. It was at the American Forage and Grassland spokesperson contest, and I'm beginning to think that maybe the reason that he beat me and I got that second place was because he was more prepared than I am. And I could read his slides. Can y'all read mine? Probably. My office manager cautioned me against this, by the way. So what we have here is a table of EPDs on 2 bulls. I got them right straight out of Air Bull Battery. These bulls are pretty different. And I'll read these off to you. What we've got here is a 14 Cavanese, a -6 birth weight, a 77 for weaning weight, 142 for yearling. On the opposite side here, we have a +6 Cavanese, a +22 birth weight. Y'all writing these down? What's that there? A +80, or you're going to get a hat. +80 for weaning weight and +144 for yearling weight. So those 2 bulls on the growth side are very similar. And for a hat, which one of those are you going to breed to heifers? The first one. Who answered that? You look like you like hats. I'll give you that. Thank you. So you can breed that first one. So I will stand by this. I'll go on record. You're recording me, right? I'm going to go on record and saying when we're mating heifers, the first and most important mating decision we need to make is birth weight. Birth weight Cavanese. I'll let you use Cavanese. I would put more stock in a higher Cavanese bull because birth weight is part of that EPD. It's considered in it. But that heifer, a friend of mine told me one time, said, I have one objective when I'm mating heifers, and that's to get a calf to weaning. That's it. He's not improving maternal traits. He's not improving carcass merit. He's not improving Cavanese maternal. He's not worried about it. He's not going to keep those heifers. He wants a live calf to hit the ground that doesn't keep him up all night. Birth weight Cavanese is where you go about it. Then I'll say this. I'll go on record again. After she has that first calf, stop worrying about birth weight. I get this all the time, where guys come into my place and they say, all right, I can't pull a calf. And I mean, when I say they can't, I don't have chains, I don't have a head chute, I don't know how to do it, I don't have time, I won't pull a calf, is what they're saying. But that doesn't mean that we have to, in the last 6 bulls they bought are all low birth weight bulls. And they'll stand there and they'll buy a smaller frame bull with less growth that's made like a Cavanese bull. And when I'm doing my hands like this for a reason, because you're going to pull that base in and you're going to narrow that thing up. Whereas that bull with 2.5 pounds of birth weight over here, on 2.2, guess how he stands? He's out there pretty wide. He's got a big top. He's got a big butt on him. Those cattle, these 2 bulls, I like both of them, don't get me wrong, but this bull over here, I think has the potential, this higher birth weight, bull has more potential to create daughters that are going to be 9, 10, 12, 15 years old in my program than this lower birth weight bull over here. And it's simple. If I walk down here, if I walk down this row and I kept my feet as close together, if I was doing a sobriety, I'm not very well practiced in that. But if I was doing it and I kept them, I'm not very stable, am I? So if I walk down here like I'm getting ready to fight John Wayne, I'm pretty stable. I got a nice base underneath me. And I think that a lot of our structure problems come from compounding low birth weight on top of low birth weight on top of low birth weight. And then when that grader, y'all grade cattle in Kentucky? Y'all got a state grader? Yes, no? Not every state does. Virginia, when they walk in that pen, that grader, what's he going to do? He's going to watch them go by, and he's going to get in behind them. And when he gets in behind them, what's the chances he's going to stamp that M on them if they're narrow? He's going to go to swiping 2s and 3s. So, and that doesn't have anything to do with fescue, but I think it has a lot to do with the fundamentals of these cattle. And I don't care how fescue tolerant something that can't walk or move is, it's not going to matter. If it falls out of my herd in 6 years because it's crippled, who cares if it could be a pink unicorn for all I care. I did have a thought in this process. I was going to get my daughter to draw a picture of a bull and say, how do we get to this ideal? She named him Cherry, and he was, I'm not kidding you guys, he was a round bull, like that. He had 4 legs coming up. They were not all going down. And he had a neck about that long, and he had a head. I didn't put it in there because I don't know how we'd get to where we were. But anyway, this is the tools that we have, correct? We've got EPDs in front of us. You start getting genomics on your cattle, and you're going to have not this same amount of data, but you're going to have a lot of data that gets you close on these correlated traits. This is an intimidating thing to break down, right? I mean, when you get all of that information in front of you, it is intimidating. And I would say that if you're not worried about it in your operation, I mean, rate of average daily gain, I mean, that's kind of weaning weight, yearling weight, right? Well, if you're not fine-tuning and making the next bull for the ABS catalog, maybe don't concern yourself with understanding every single one of these, right? But a lot of these are really good. Scrotal circumference, heifer pregnancy, those are, and it's spelled out right here in a percentage. So if we're above 50% in that, and this is how my grandfather, my uncle, they taught me how to breed them like this, and they said if you're above 50%, you're improving that trait, right? You're better than half of the breed. So you're increased. You've made a conscious decision that this is where we're going in this genetic trend. And there's some traits, in my opinion, 50% isn't enough. Docility over here is one of them. This bull's in the 20th percentile. This bull's in the, is that 15th? Golly, I'm very close to that. I owe an extreme apology to my office manager who told me not to do this. That docility, that means a lot to me. Maybe it doesn't mean a lot to you. You can forget about it. In fact, in the Angus website, you can hide these right here because docility, claw, angle, that's your foot EPDs, your pap, your hair shed. If you're not keeping heifers, don't even look there, right? If this is a terminal mating, don't worry about it. You let the feed yard worry about when his feet fall apart. They'll cut his head off anyway. So that's kind of how we get where we are, right? Well, we've got these 2 bulls here, and I've got 2 more here. You can't read them either. So we won't worry about it. We'll worry about the original 2. Let's say we've got an animal that is, this is for a notepad. Let's say I've kind of given you the answer. We've got an animal that we've genomic, that we've visually appraised, that we've measured, and we said, this is ideal for our environment. This is an ideal animal. What do you want to mate that animal to? It doesn't necessarily have to be these 2 bulls, but what do you want to mate that ideal animal to? Something that it's ideal as well, right? Who said that? All right. See, I knew you didn't want a hat. That's why you didn't answer the last one. You got your own lid. Thank you. Yeah, man. So now we're stacking ideal on top of ideal. And this goes for fescue. I mean, the principles of cattle breeding, they're all, it doesn't matter what trait you're looking for. You're breeding cherry, you need a round bull, you need a little short neck, you need 4 legs that go out like this, like he's slipping on ice skates. So as we start layering that on top, and we say, a lot of times we think, all right, and there's something wrong with every one of them, don't get me wrong. And the more you know, the more you know is wrong with them. And so we're all, it's our human nature to kind of, well, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to go in there. I don't like this. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get it. I have a producer that came to me, and he's been using genomics for an extremely long period of time. Golly, when did genomics on commercial cattle come out? 15 years ago? Is that something in that realm? He was probably in there day 3. So he started using genomics. Do you know what his selection criteria were? He wanted a bull that would keep him kind of where he was, and he's been layering this on top, ideal on top of ideal on top of ideal. He wanted a bull that would keep him where he was, but he needed to improve calving ease maternal. And I said, man, you're a commercial cattleman. Why are you worried? He said, it's the only thing I have left to get where I want it. And I thought, wow, in his idea, I've got them ideal except for calving ease maternal. I've got one tiny little thing that I need to fix in these cattle, and it's calving ease maternal. I was like, why are you worried about something so minuscule? And he's a particular guy, and that's what he was doing. That's what he was doing. So that's where we get to where things get easy, right? That's when we're riding on easy street. Then we got one turn left, and we're about to get where we were going. All right. Really don't need to touch on this. It's been touched on by the champion forage spokesperson. But this is just a really simple cross-breeding program that I came up with, or I didn't come up with it. I got this from Mississippi State. It's so simple. I mean, and look, I don't think they did these bulls wrong. And you've got breed A here. That bull's black. I mean, a lot of people have Angus cattle, right? I mean, you call somebody up and say, what kind of cows you got? I got Angus cows, And you ask them about a red carrier bull, and he'll say, well, there might be a little something back in there, Yeah. But this bull over here is a little different color, and I think that this works very well. You pick the breeds A and B. I don't really care. I'll tell you, we have the 3 breeds, and we sell bulls of each of them, and it was a great source of pride for my grandfather to say that we had options. When you came to our place, we didn't have to sell you a Hereford bull because that's all we had. We could sell you a Balancer bull or a Gelpie bull or an Angus bull because we had those options. And that didn't mean that you built a relationship with us. You wanted to buy a bull from us, but you didn't have to be stuck right here in this area because that's all that the person you built this relationship had, right? So, in our situation, if we, and it doesn't have to be this way. This is an Angus bull, and let's say this is a Gelpie, a Balancer. It could be a Hereford, and you just swap these back and forth. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and these bulls can be the same color. You preg check them. You know what you got coming. And when the calf hits the ground, you put a different color tag in its ear. And then in Angus are yellow tags at their place, and Gelpies are white. So yellow tags get a white bull. White bull gets a yellow tag, or white calves get a yellow tag. It's simple. You can do this with Sim Angus and Hereford. You can do it with, pick your breeds here. Now, this bottom graphic, I don't think that bull's white for the wrong reason. I don't sell Charolais bulls, but I'm telling you that this makes a lot of sense. The right Charolais bull, I think, makes a lot of sense. They even did a good job of making this bull bigger. And this is a terminal cross. And the great thing about that Charolais bull? He's white. And you can't talk yourself into it. In that pen, when you're looking at those heifers that walk by, and they're 50 pounds heavier, and you say, gosh, they look nice, and they're black, you can slide them in. Dad doesn't have to know. You can change that ear tag. But when there's smokes, your neighbors can tell from with their drone from 6 miles away that you did a no-no. You did what you weren't supposed to do. You kept one that you weren't supposed to keep. And I just feel like that is it's a simple way of going about it. You can do this with, 30 cows in this group, 30 cows in this group. I guess the question becomes, well, what do you do after that? What do you do after you make this initial cross? Well, you just keep going back and forth. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. But I agree wholeheartedly that heterosis is the only free lunch we're going to get. And it will help you tremendously with fescue tolerance. When we start crossing these things, if I was a commercial cattleman, there is no way. The only thing that would be registered on my place is my dog and the neighbor. This thing, there's no reason to be breeding straight-bred cattle. In fact, we deal with some cooperators, and I've alluded to the fact we have balancer cattle, which is a composite between Gelbvieh and Angus. Our cooperators run balancer cattle because they're simple. I mean, they're simple. You don't have to say, all right, well, we've really got to get you to make sure that you're managing this, that, or the other. We just say, take those cows, the ones that fall out, get rid of them. They're simple. Heterosis will increase fertility by a lot. I mean, it's documented, well documented. When you're looking at going into if you're going to start a breeding program, I think heterosis needs to be at the beginning. It probably needs to be back on that first slide when we're talking about where are we going. What's that cow going to look like, right? I mean, I think it needs to probably look a little different than a straight bred such and such or this or that. So, this is just a beautiful picture I took. This is what happens when you feel good, right? I rode up the road, those cows there behind some poly wire, and it was just habit. End of the day, my uncle would check them in the first part of the day in the morning, make sure no deer would run through the fence. I'd check them in the afternoon, and I pulled up and I said, "Man, that's beautiful right there." Right? That's my. I don't know what heaven's going to look like. I'm going. I hope y'all are too. But that's what heaven looks like a little bit in my mind. So that's what and you see, there's nothing really descriptive about those cows. They're just out there grazing, having a good time, and yeah, so that's kind of the end of it, except for this beauty right here. That's Hadley laid back. She's got her cows bred. She's mating ideal to ideal. She's just eating nabs. Y'all call them nabs? She's just eating nabs, drinking a water bottle, just looking at Daddy like, what are you doing, Dad? So anyway, that's my spiel on genetics for tall fescue and adaptability.
Is there any questions for Dalton while I get changed over for our next speaker?
I hope so. I know I didn't cover it. I not at all.
Dalton, on your farm, is there one of those breeds, or you notice the difference in your crossbreeds and your balancers?
Oh, there's no. Yeah, the crossbreds are so much. And now let me put a caveat into that. With those crossbred cattle, we were one of the first people to bring Gelbviehs east of the Mississippi. And we did that in 1980 something or another, 81. Those cattle were here they've been here for a long time. I bought a bull the other year from Nebraska, and not that he was terrible for it, but he put a little more hair on those bulls, or on his calves than some of our home-raised bulls. So, yeah, those crossbred cattle are very adaptable, very fertile. I see a huge difference in that. But really, so when it comes to fescue tolerance, we are bringing those outside influences. But remember, like in that sire selection, we still got that 50% of that blue cow we've put her through the paces. She's on fescue for most of her life. So we know that she can go through the paces, that she's a tolerant cow. And I've said this before in grazing conferences, that I'll probably be the last person to get to novel endophyte. Not that I don't believe in it, I don't think that it's a useful tool, but I have to manage worse than my customers. And when my last customer, or last potential customer, converts to all novel endophyte, I'll do it. But otherwise, I have to express that genetic potential for that fescue tolerance, I guess is That makes sense? Yes, sir.
You're one of the few of them like us that bring a lot of cattle in from outside of Fescue State. I'm just curious, I know what we've seen, but how long has it taken you all to get them Fescue back?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't bring in a lot of females. We'll bring in bulls, and I think so. I don't want to name a lot of names, but we bought some cattle from Keneally Angus. If anybody knows Keneally Angus, they're a pretty popular Angus breeder, right? We bought some cattle from them way back in the day, and they're in Whitman, Nebraska, the Sand Hills of Nebraska. Those cows got to our place and could not figure out what shade was. They didn't have any at home, right? Those cows would get up on top of the hill and they bundle up and they try to get their head lower than the next one. What we did with that big slug of cows was we put them in, and we dropped them in not entirely by themselves, but there was enough of their mates that they rode on the pot with that they could buddy up. And they finally figured out how to get to the shade. But had we taken one cow and dropped her out in there, or one bull, that's the main, that's where you're going to import your genetics, correct? Is that bull. You take one bull, drop him in a group of cows, he's probably going to figure it out pretty quick. And I'm going to go with them. It looks, everybody else is doing it. I don't think anybody's ever told somebody that went to boot camp where food was, but I don't think anybody ever starved to death at boot camp. They probably just got in line and Penguin walked it right in there. So I think it's, if you're going to bring 60 cows, put them in their group, I don't have an answer for you, how you get them adapted to the system. And there's subtle nuances about different farms on their places that this cow's got it figured out, that one doesn't, that sort of thing. That I think that commingling. I mean, we always like to put a old cow with her heifers. She'll come when you call her. She's kind of showing them the ropes, right? She's like, look, y'all worry about that road over there. You come down here. You just that sort of thing. I mean, that doesn't answer your question, but in a roundabout way, it kind of does, I guess. Anybody else? Oh, man, I got it all.
Thank Dalton for his presentation.
Figure out which one's which.
All right, Jason.